Hey, what is up, Conroe? This is Rick TRC. You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KZZWLP Conroe and 106.1 on KZCCLP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and this is the Weekly Business Hour, and I'm Rick Schissler. I'm your host. I'm a Silver Fox advisor and the founder of OneBestConsult.com. Well, thank you first for joining us today. We are broadcasting live from the studios of Lone Star Community Radio, which is located in downtown Conroe, Texas, which is the fastest growing small city in America. So it is a place to be if you want to do business. And my first question of the day to you, if you own your business or you manage a business, is how is your cash flow? You know, that's always been an important piece of information for any business. But I contend it's more important now than perhaps in the past, because what is going on in the marketplace, what is going on with our economy as we recover from 2020 and the COVID virus, if you don't have the right cash flow, then you're not going to be able to compete and grow your business. So take a look at that cash flow, and at least on a weekly or monthly basis, pay attention to it. I find way too many business people don't keep an eye on it, but prepare yourself with the right cash flow. The Weekly Business Hour is where Montgomery County and really businesses throughout the world come to share the latest in business news, ideas to improve your business, and to be part of conversations that can make a real difference in your business even today. So thank you for joining us. And I want to make a reminder, as I try to do every week, a reminder to you that the show is being broadcast live on YouTube. Just simply look up the Weekly Business Hour page. That way you can watch as well as listen to us here in the studio. Before we start talking about our soup to nuts conversation, which I think is really interesting about building your exit, I want to let you know, as I always try to do continuously in whatever medium I'm working in, if you have a question for myself, for the guest, you have a comment about the show, or even if you just have a question about your business, you're wondering how to do something, how to move forward, just drop me an email. It's real easy. Just send me an email at that's the number one, bestconsult@gmail.com. That's bestconsult@gmail.com. I respond to my emails. I enjoy getting my emails. In fact, we even talk about some of the issues that folks send me on the show. So again, drop us an email at onebestconsult@gmail.com. Well, let's get to the business at hand, and that's the business of talking about your business and subjects and information that can help you. And today we're going to have a conversation with a business expert, Mike Holloman. He's the Managing Director, Central Houston of Murphy Business and Financial Corporation. And this conversation, as I alluded to earlier, will be a continuation of a soup to nuts series about setting your business exit strategy. If you recall, recently we had Michelle Seiler Tucker of Seiler Tucker, a national recognized business firm which helps position businesses for the future and the sale of their business. It's a task that every business needs to take on. My preference, you take it on when you start the business. If not, get to it as quick as you can. Even if your sale date is 20 years in the future, you need to consider some basics about selling your business if, in fact, you want to maximize the return that you get when that sale date arrives. Today, Mike and I will primarily be discussing about how to buy a business so you can add its revenue to your business, use of financing in buying or even expanding your business, because financing is something that a lot of small businesses don't see the advantage of or don't have access to. More importantly, they don't think they have access to. but it's there. There are all kinds of financings. As long as you've got an existing business, my experience is you need to be 2 years in the business. You need to show positive financials, and then there will be people in a variety of locations, a variety of type of people who will finance and help you finance the growth or purchase of another business. So we're going to talk about building your business to the right size to sell it, which is part of another step in the personal journey to exit your business on your terms. Well, Mike Holloman, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you coming into the studio and going to help us continue this journey about exiting our businesses. It's something, again, as you and I've discussed, and I've said on the radio, I probably have some folks throwing rotten tomatoes at me about how important that exit strategy is. It doesn't take a lot of effort in the beginning, but you don't want to get to the end and not thought through it, because you walk away with, Michelle Tucker says 80% of the businesses that go up for sale don't sell.
Yeah.
What's been your experience?
Yeah, it really does depend. I mean, the quality of the business will determine how well it sells. So different people will see different ratios of what they see as likely for sale. But in the end, if your business isn't generating a cash flow that's appealing to buyers, your business won't sell. So whether it takes 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, if you're looking to sell your business, you want to make sure that it's going to appeal to the various types of buyers that are out there. So you're going to want to make sure that your cash flow is strong, your books are strong, and that your processes are replicable so that you can then pass that on to a new owner. So from a buyer perspective, they're wanting to find out, when I buy this business, how much hit will I take in my cash flow through the transition period and adapting to acquiring the new business, and then how quickly can I stabilize it and grow it and make a return on my investment.
Yeah, it makes sense. And really what we're talking about in general is talking about creating value.
Yeah.
And that's what you've got to do with your business, is create value. Oftentimes I find that small business people, they started a business, or even if they plan to start a business, and it's more like they're looking for a job that they have control over, and they don't really consider, even though they expect in the back of their mind to sell it, they don't really consider creating value in the business itself.
Right. I mean, you mentioned that cash flow. I mean, that really is king when it comes to this. And what drives value most is recurring and reliable cash flow. So it's not just even did you generate cash flow, but can a new buyer, when they take over that business, replicate that cash flow and rely upon it? So the stronger and more reliable and recurring your cash flow is, the stronger value you have.
You briefly in an earlier conversation that you and I had, there's basically, just to kind of get this thing, for those who are only thinking about it now and not really worked on their exit strategy or really thought through, preferably put it on paper, in my opinion, even if it's a single sheet. There are 4 entry points, the way you present it, to getting in business. Talk briefly about that.
Sure. So part of what I do is I'm a huge fan of entrepreneurship and the idea of business ownership. And you have different types of risk profiles. You have different types of personalities. And part of what a buyer has to assess, or someone who wants to go into business for themselves has to assess, is where do they fit on that. But we generally will look at someone who either is a super creative type and really wants to run their own show, and they want to create their own ideas. That person's going to be a startup. They're going to come up with their own idea. They're going to build their business from scratch, bootstrap it, and make it happen. Then you have other people who may be coming from a corporate background or may be more risk averse. They may be more drawn toward a franchise type structure, where they either they like the idea and concept, but they want to build it themselves, so they'll buy a brand new franchise and put kind of the sweat equity into making that happen. There may be others who are drawn to that franchise model, but they want to already have one that's established and proven, so they'll buy what we call a franchise resale. Someone else has already bought the franchise, started it, has it up and running, has that stable cash flow going, and now they're ready to sell it to the next buyer. That person will step in and buy an existing franchise. And then you have kind of that final step, which is the acquisition of an existing independent business. And that may appeal to a brand new buyer, someone who's leaving corporate life, or someone who's decided that they're just graduating from college, whatever it may be, but they want to own their own business and without the constraints or limitations that a franchise would have upon you. And they will look to buy an existing business. But often it's other businesses who are looking to either achieve tactical or strategic benefit, or maybe expand into new markets, expand into new products. And rather than trying to grow that up from within their own business, it makes more sense to do it through acquisition.
Well, and all that makes sense. And I go through it with people about how to choose the way
Yeah.
to enter business. The funding, though, of a business, and particularly at transaction time when you're starting or when you're buying another business, doing a startup, walk us through that as well, just to kind of prime the pump, so to speak.
Sure. I mean, it really depends kind of on where you're coming from. So if you're a brand new graduate out of college who maybe doesn't have a lot of collateral to your name, you may be looking at options different than someone who's an existing business owner whose business is generating 10, 15 million a year in revenue and they're looking to expand. But overall, you're going to be looking at the cash flow of the subject business, the one you're acquiring, and you're going to, that's ultimately what will drive the kind of the ability to obtain financing. But some people will rely on friends and family and bring them in as investment partners, silent or sometimes active. So that's always a safe course if you're looking for quick cash without a lot of strings. But then you have to always, keep in mind going into business with friends and family can sometimes get tricky. So often business acquirers will choose to use banks for borrowing or third-party investors to help them. And there's a plethora of opportunities in the lending environment, especially right now with COVID and some of the changes with the CARES Act and the recent act passed with the American, drawing a blank on the name of it right now, but the one that they just signed a couple weeks ago, the SBA has several different programs that allow you to buy real estate, property, other businesses under very favorable terms, 10-year time frames, interest rates running around 6%. People who close on their businesses right now before the end of September can see the loan fees waived as well as the first 3 months of payments made for them. Banks are being encouraged to lend. The amount that the government will basically insure them or back them on those loans has been raised from 75% to 90%. So if you're buying $1 million business, a bank will often lend up to $700,000, $800,000. And the government is now backing 90% of that loan. So the banks are very incentivized to give loans to people. Obviously, the person's credit matters in that equation, but more so it's the business that you're buying. So if the business has that strong cash flow that you're always talking about, if the business has 2 or more years of proof that they can make it work, the bank will see that as a strong investment as long as the buyer buying that business has some basis of ability to run the business.
Yeah, I mean, it is a time of opportunity, and in a lot of different ways it is, in my opinion. The process of buying a business, I'm intrigued because it is a process if you do it right. It's not like, I saw an ad in the paper, or like my grandfather did. He stopped in Houston on the way back to Atlanta on a trip, and somebody said, well, there's a business for sale over here, and he got on the phone and called and talked to him, and the next day, in principle, he had a deal and moved his family here, and the rest, as they say, is history. Turned out to be an extremely successful decision on his part, but to do it like that, it leaves a lot of room for failure.
It can be. I mean, I think with anything, I mean, you always talk about doing a plan and having and kind of thinking through your moves, and buying a business is no different. I mean, you really need to. I always, particularly when we have first-time buyers, which is about 50% of our pool of buyers. When we have a first-time buyer, we often will ask them, "Why do you want to be in business for yourself?" I mean, sometimes it's there's the glamour of owning your own business, but you do have to think about some of the stress that comes with it as well. But I always say the risk more than justifies the reward. But part of it is assessing your own personality, your profile for do you want to work with a product-based business? Do you want to work with a service-based business? Do you want to manage employees, or do you want to be on your own? Do you prefer a brick-and-mortar type location or something that's more mobile or potentially online? So a lot of it is about doing a personality and goals assessment, so that when you're starting off with the business acquisition process, you have a feel for what it is you're looking to achieve. Often we'll have buyers come to us who say, I'm leaving a corporate job, I've just been laid off, or maybe I just can't take it any longer, and I want to own a business. And our first question is, okay, well, what kind of business do you want? Oh, I don't know, anything that generates $200,000 a year in cash. Well, that's great, but there's a huge mix of businesses that can do that for you. Do you have the money to do down payments? So you have to think about, what do you want to do? What kind of products or services do you want to offer, at least within industry types? And what are your financial needs? And then what cash can you bring to the table versus how do you intend to fund that? And then the last piece is, it's not just once you buy the business, it's also then what's your long-term goal? How long do you want to own the business before you exit that business? So what are your goals? Are you looking to achieve a return on investment, or are you just looking to buy a job and generate income that meets your immediate cash needs for some time period?
Well, as you well put it, there are a lot of steps. We've come to the end of our first segment. We're going to have to take a break, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you'll stay with us. We're going to continue this conversation with Mike Holloman, talk about lenders, things to look for, and I think it's very important. And I kind of want to double back on that psychological profile, so to speak, of the buyer of a business. So please stay with us. We'll be right back with you.
Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's radio station with talk, music, weather, and traffic for Montgomery County. Have a question or comment about one of our shows? Want to know how to reach a host? Just contact the station at irlonestar.com or call in and leave a message at 936-647-3776. Get involved with your community with Lone Star Community Radio.
Second Saturday Divorce Workshop provides unbiased information to help you understand your options and move forward with your life. This divorce workshop is for you if you are contemplating divorce, in the process of divorce, already filed for divorce, or post-divorce. You will explore the emotional, legal, and financial aspects of divorce from professionals who have guided others through divorce. For more information on this divorce workshop, contact secondsaturdaywoodlands.com or call 832-375-0900.
Listen in Mondays at noon to hear Conroe news from local nonprofits, businesses, upcoming events, Conroe Park events, news stories, and information that matters to you with your host, Margie Taylor of Taylorized PR. For more information about being a guest, visit irlonestar.com/Conroe Culture.
You are listening to the Weekly Business Hour, and I'm your host, Rick Schissler. Again, thank you for joining us today. We're having a wonderful conversation, I believe, with Mike Holloman. Mike is a business expert on buying, selling businesses, and we're talking in particular today about buying a business, whether it's to add that to your existing business, to expand, or you want to go into business and you want to buy an existing business. So I think there's a lot of information there, a lot of things that a person needs to do. Mike, I want to double back a little bit, though, before we get into due diligence, which is such an important thing that often does get shortchanged by a potential buyer and leads to all kinds of issues that never needed to come up. But is that personality. I believe that when you buy or start a business, get into a business, however you want to phrase it or however you get in, it's got to fit your personality.
Yeah.
Because the one thing people miss, they're getting into a business, and many times their family gets into it. Many times they're just a silent partner because they've convinced their spouse they want to be in business. But you got to, one, most importantly, think about your silent partners, or they may work with you in the business. We've had some very successful couples come through here that work together day in and day out. My wife and I tried that. It didn't work, but that's okay. She has a full-time job raising 6 children as it was. But the point is, I guess, is people really need to pay attention to this when they consider what kind of business they get in, what industry, at what level are they going to compete at. Shine a little more light on that if you don't mind.
Sure. I mean, I think in the end, whether you're working a job or you're working for somebody else or whether you're owning your own business, you're putting in, minimum 30, 40, if not 80, 90, 100 hours a week. So you want to know that what you're doing is something you derive personal pleasure out of and that you're a fit for that. So we often will have someone who's leaving a corporate job saying, all the things they hate about their job, and then they'll turn around and start looking at businesses that are basically a mirror profile. Well, that's not the right fit. So the questions you have to ask yourself when you're thinking about what's the psychological profile or what works for me is you have to think about things like how do you handle stress? How do you handle managing people? How do you manage clients? Because if you have a background in engineering, for instance, in operations, and you're looking to go into a business that's a retail service business where you're doing front-facing customer service, and you're having to deal with sometimes customers who aren't necessarily always so happy. I mean, your end goal as a business owner is to make sure they're happy, but how do you handle that if they lose their mind on you? So you really need to think about, same thing with your investment partners. If you're going into business with your spouse, or if you're going into business with friends, where are each of your strengths and weaknesses, and how will you manage 2 years from now when that one little minor thing you thought was going to be a grading personality difference is now this huge problem where you're trying to work with your partner going into the business every day. So these are all things you just have to ask yourself. There's no right answer. It really just depends on each individual person. So you want to work with a coach or an advisor or a broker or somebody who's seen enough examples of what does and doesn't work to help kind of guide you through that personality matching when you're determining a business type.
Yeah, it's just so important. Let's take a couple minutes and talk about due diligence. Talk about some of the key issues here because people, when they buy something, anything really, depending on the size of the transaction, or even if it's a small item, you still do due diligence. You may not realize it, but you're doing it. What are some of the key issues on doing due diligence to purchase a business?
Sure. So I think in the end, there's a couple of different ways to find the businesses in the first place. So that's part of what drives kind of what your due diligence would look like. So you're going to be working with a broker, or you may just on your own start looking through either some of the publicly available websites and listings that show businesses for sale. You may be referred to a business that someone says, hey, I don't know if they'd sell or not, but maybe it makes sense for your business to pair up with them. So part of it depends on how you find the business. But in general, once you've gone through the process of identifying, okay, what kind of business do I want, or what kind of business will help my existing business grow, at that point, you're going to target, the business that you want to acquire, and you're going to, initially ask them after signing confidentiality agreements for base level information that you'll use to present an offer and present terms. You'll negotiate those terms. After you guys have an agreed contract where conceptually either a letter of intent or an actual offer to purchase with some contingencies thrown in there that let you back out if due diligence isn't satisfied, if leases aren't satisfied, if financing isn't obtained. Those are kind of the big ones. But due diligence, financing, and lease. Once you have those three kind of contingencies set up, you're going to want to start that due diligence process. Well, the due diligence process is where you're really validating the information that you have. So in due diligence, the very first thing you're going to want to focus on is financials. You want to make sure the books and records of the business you're acquiring is clean and that you trust them. So if they've told you they have a certain amount of sales and they've had that amount of sales for the last 3 to 5 years, they've told you what their expenses are, and you have an approximate opinion of what you think the net income will be, that's going to tell you what's that cash flow that you should reasonably be able to expect going forward. Some adjustments accounted for if there's changes in how you might manage the business. If during your due diligence phase, which is, depending on the size of the business, can be anywhere from 14 days up to 3 months, during that phase, you start looking at the books and records and you're comparing tax returns to P&L statements, or you're looking at bank statements to see if the deposits in the bank statement add up to about what the revenue numbers are on the P&Ls. If you start seeing substantial differences, that's a red flag that says, I need to look deeper and figure out what I might be missing. So that's one bit piece, is the financials. But it's not just the financials, it's also operations. So you're going to want to look at products and services. How well is the inventory being managed? Even things like, is the back room clean and well organized, or is it a complete pigsty? Because you're going to be relying on inventory numbers, or you may be relying on other statements from the seller that if it's not actually the case, you want to find that during your due diligence. Because once your due diligence period is expired, it's similar to real estate. After that inspection period is done, there's no backing out of that contract. So it's critical to look at that. The other piece would be personnel. So any staff, particularly if there's a key salesperson or any key relationships, if there's any key suppliers or supplier relationships, those are all components that you would evaluate while you're in your due diligence phase to make sure that there's nothing that maybe wasn't disclosed or maybe wasn't presented in a way that made you realize how important it was to the success of the business going forward. In the end, you want to make sure that after due diligence, you feel like you fully understand the business and that you trust the information that's been presented to you to allow you to decide to make that purchase.
Yeah, that trust is very important.
Yeah.
Particularly whether it's financials or personnel, all the key elements of the business. Inventory, a little easier because you can see it, touch it,
right,
typically,
yeah,
and you can talk to suppliers. But we're coming down the home stretch today, and you brought some points up about lender considerations, and we've got a couple, 3 minutes left. Let's talk about, because financing, again, is something oftentimes the small business owner doesn't have a lot of experience in their career, especially if they came out of a corporate job. They haven't done any business financing. So I think it's important that our listeners understand some of the considerations in dealing with a lender.
Sure. So particularly with SBA loans, which is probably how 80% of debt-based loans are done for Main Street businesses, so businesses that are kind of in the $5 million and under price tag. You're typically going to use an SBA 504, 7A loan, depending on if there's real estate or hard collateral involved. But in any of those cases, the lender wants to make sure that you can pay off the debt. That's the main thing. So your cash on hand is going to be the number one thing they're looking at. How much are you putting down? What is the collateral that you're bringing to the table? Maybe you don't have a lot of cash at hand, but you might have properties or other investments that you can pledge as collateral so that they feel like you're in the game with them, that they're not bearing all the risk for you. So cash on hand, I would say, is the number one. The other piece is you. They're going to want to know, do you have the character and the personality and the experience, the education, the background to run this business? So in general, the lenders for business acquisition are looking at the strength of the business. But if the strength of the business is weakened by the person buying the business, that's a negative. On the flip side, if you are bringing something new or bringing a skill set that will allow that business to continue as is or even flourish, then they see that as a positive and they're willing to take that risk on you and lend the money. So cash and character kind of are the two really big ones. The collateral, I think we mentioned earlier, that's another piece tied to the cash. So it's not just what you're putting down, but also what you bring. And then the market, if it's a scenario where you're buying a blockbuster video and it's clearly already moved on to Netflix as being the new thing, they're not as likely to take the risk with you. You might make a compelling case, but often you'll see the lenders where they might normally say you put 10 to 15% down, we'll bring you 85. If the market's weak, either because the product or the service seems to be on a declining stage, you're going to see them reduce the amount they're loaning. So they may only loan you 50% of purchase price in that scenario. And then the last piece that we often focus on is capitalization. So it's not just the purchase of the business, but the recurring cash flow of the business. So does it have the working capital needed to then sustain operations after you buy it? So if you go in and buy $1 million business, borrow $800,000 to make it happen, but it's going to cost you $500,000 a month for the first couple of months in operating cost, then just borrowing the purchase price isn't enough. So part of what you're looking at when you're working with a lender is not just the purchase price, but also making sure that you have the liquidity, the business has the liquidity, or the lender provides you the additional liquidity to make sure that as you're transitioning into that ownership, you're able to carry the cost of operations.
Yeah, it's very important because as you were going through that, that's what flashes in my mind is the operations for the first 3, 6 months, 12 months, as you get used to the business or depending on your level of involvement. So, well, as we wrap up today, you've given us a lot of great information. What would you say is the single most important issue when someone's buying a business that they need to consider?
The single most would be cash flow. I mean, it's not just is the business generating cash flow, but it's also what are your personal cash flow needs? I mean, if you're someone whose personal budget and family budget allows for $50,000 a year to be sufficient income, then a business cash flowing $100,000 is great. But if you're coming from a job where you're earning $200,000-$300,000 a year and you're buying a business that's cash flowing $75,000, you need to figure out where you're going to take some adjustments to your personal budget. So really, it's cash flow. Cash flow determines the value of the business. It also determines whether or not the business is going to meet your financial needs. So that's an important piece. Yeah,
the personal cash flow. I like that. Very, very important issue. One that again probably doesn't get enough attention by a lot of buyers.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, I can't thank you enough. You've, again, provided wonderful information, some ideas, some direction that I hope our listeners, when and if they consider buying a business, will take into consideration. If folks want to follow up and get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. I'm always happy. We love to speak with buyers, even if you're just thinking about it. We do no-fee consultations for initial buyers and sellers of businesses. My direct phone is office 713-581-4514. We take that's voice or text. And then email m.holloman@murphybusiness.com. Either of those are great ways to reach me.
Well, again, thank you so much. And I encourage you, folks, if you've got a question about buying a business or looking for someone to help walk you through it, reach out to Mike and Murphy. I think they can do you a good job and help direct you. We all need some guidance. Don't shy away for asking for help. Again, we're going to take our bottom of the hour break. And I want to remind you that the podcast and video cast of today's show will be posted on Wednesday of this week. at all the social media sites related to business. You can pick it up here at the station website, irlonestar.com. Just go to the Weekly Business Hour page, click on it. So if you miss something or you want to share it with somebody, it's going to be right there for your use. And coming up in the second half of the show, first, I'm going to review a couple comments that Mike made that I pick out that are really important to me, and I hope that I can convey some additional information to you. Then I've got a quick idea, as I call it. The quick idea this week, 2 ideas that you as an owner need to embrace. And then finally, I'll wrap up today's show, as I always do, with one Best Consult tip of the week. This week entitled, Is Social Media a Friend of Your Business? So please stay with us, and we'll be right back with you.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show. With monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
Hey y'all, it's DJ Mike from Dance Time in Texas. Join me Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. as I count down the top 10 Texas Red Dirt songs that are packing the dance floor. I'll be featuring local artists and the story behind the hits, shows in the area, as well as new songs that make you want to dance. It's Dance Time in Texas with DJ Mike on Lone Star Community Radio, 104.5 KCZW and 106.1 KZCC, Conroe, Texas, or online, irlonestar.com.
Vell Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit, began in 2014 with a mission to strengthen the future of veterans through leadership and entrepreneurship training. We've invested over 1,400 hours of training in our veterans while connecting them with community entrepreneurs and leaders. Our mission is to continue investing in our veterans who have given so much for our country. Please join us in our mission by visiting vellinstitute.org. That's VELinstitute.org.
You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour, and this is Rick Schissler. I'm your host, and I repeat that throughout the show because I really do appreciate you tuning in and listening to us or watching the video podcast after the fact of the show. Also, again, remember, if you have something you want to talk about, something you want to ask a question about, whether it's for one of our guests or myself, or even a comment about the show, just drop me an email at onebestconsult@gmail.com. That's the number 1, bestconsult@gmail.com. Please send the emails. Love to hear from you. Well, the first thing I want to touch on very briefly is a little recap, as I call it, of the conversation we had with Mike Holloman today. 2 things really stood out for me because based on my experience, personal experience, when I was in business, and also the number of clients that I've worked with over the last 15, 20 years who are small business owners, 2 things jumped at me. One is the personal profile, as I call it. And Mike talked about that extensively, about being fit for the right business. In other words, finding the right fit is better said, I think, for you in a business. This is an issue that I happen to really see as a major, major problem, or could also be an advantage if you do it right. You need to find a business that works for you personally. So as Mike said, when you work those 80, 90 hours, you've got the passion, you want to get up every day, you want to go to work, you like what you're doing. And that is so important, and so many times I've seen it just the opposite, because folks didn't really consider, is this the kind of business that I want to be in? And I think that's a critical step. Not just you like the product or you like the service, but is this the day-to-day type of job that I want to go to? So consider that. And secondly, another personal issue, and that's the cash flow. When you're considering buying a business, consider operating a business, starting a business, look at your personal needs, your family, and don't make a mistake to put it all out there on the table and take a risk beyond what you and your family can stand. But importantly, you need that cash flow. A lot of businesses get started. I've done this, and I didn't take a salary for the first year, 2 years. Some people, it takes longer than that, but they have it built into their personal cash flow model. So it's very, very important, as Mike said, to do that. So both of these are personal issues, but oh, so important. I want to talk about quick ideas. I love to come up with the quick ideas because these are real quick things, and I hope that they make sense to you, but they're very important. And today, it's entitled, These Are Ideas That the Owner Needs to Embrace. First is addressing your fatigue. You know, many small business owners at some point in their career, sometimes more than once, get to a point they're very tired, they're very fatigued, they can't sleep, whatever it might be. And you know that when you look in the mirror, so to speak, you are not doing your best. You're not doing the best for your business. So you need to determine whether your fatigue is medically driven or is it just physical. You're tired, you've been working those 80, 90 hours, things are difficult. 2020 was a difficult year. Don't put off addressing the issue of fatigue. And the second thing, quick idea, is work to wean your business off of you. Now, what does that mean? Is your business too dependent on you? In other words, if you miss a couple hours of work, is that going to be a big problem for your business? If you miss a week, 2 weeks, I find way too many business owners say, well, I haven't had a vacation in 5 years, 10 years. I don't feel comfortable taking off. You don't want to be there for two reasons that stand out to me. One is we all need time to recharge our batteries and to cut off and get away from the business. And two, like we talked about today with Mike Holloman, we need to build a business that is sustainable if we planned as part of our exit to sell that business. Nobody's going to buy a business that depends on you as a business owner to work day to day and make the financial projections that you provide. So a couple, I think, really good reasons to work towards making the business not so dependent on you. It's an issue that takes time, it takes patience, and it takes you to focus on it to find the right people, put them in the right slot so you are not dependent and the business is not dependent on you. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about some other things that I ran into this past week. But most importantly, I'm going to talk about our One Best Consult tip of the week is social media a friend of your business?
Want to check out the fastest growing sport in the world? It's right here in Conroe, Texas, and it's roller derby. Conroe Roller Derby is a non-profit recreational league of women and men who want you to come and check out the fast-paced, hard-hitting game of roller derby. The Conroe Cutthroats practice at Rainbow Roller Rink on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. You can find our game schedule and more information on our website, www.conroerollerderby.com.
A Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
Does your company have needs that can be met by an employee who is dependable, hardworking, enthusiastic, motivated, cooperative, respectful, and punctual? Conroe Independent School District Special Education Department can meet your needs by connecting you with potential employees that have been preparing for a lifetime of employment. We have numerous individuals seeking paid and unpaid work experiences. If your company is interested in seeing how we can meet your business needs, call Conroe ISD Special Education Department to find the best employees for you at 709-7671.
You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour, and this is our final segment for our program today. And again, thank you for joining us. I'm going to get to my one best consult tip just in a few minutes. One of the things that I want to address and try to offer some assurances. Right now, there is just, in my opinion, an overload of information out there on the internet, on news channels and whatnot about this, that, a lot of negative news. Where really the most important thing to you and I right now is operating our businesses day to day. I mean, we just came through a year that is the most challenging year for so many types of businesses. And we're beginning in many areas of the country to see growth. I mean, look at the housing market nationwide. This morning I read in the Wall Street Journal where the number of realtors is larger than the total number of houses that are currently for sale. Think about that. I don't know if I want to be a realtor right now. I might not find a house to sell, but that's indicative of the growth that's taking place in some industries. Others are still catching up. But my point to you is try to keep your focus on where you think your industry is going, where your business, your marketplace is going in the next 30, 60, 90 days. And we're going to touch on that a little bit in my tip. But I find so many folks are still kind of stuck in the COVID epidemic mindset. And I'm not talking about mask or PPE or anything, but they don't have that bright outlook for the future, which to me, they don't have the honest ability. They're not being honest with themselves in looking down the road through, just say, the balance of this year or the next quarter. And that is important to keep your eye on the prize, as the expression is. Very important. I don't care how big or small your business is, because you make decisions and you don't want to knee-jerk a decision. You don't want to make a decision based on an emotion that really could prove negative to you and your family, your business, your employees. So try to shake off the dust, so to speak, and some of this negativity that just flows out here that all seems directly or indirectly to threaten the existence of your business or even yourself. There is business there. It's going to be good business. A lot of economists say great business, but prepare you for what you need to do in your market. Well, one best consult tip of the week is social media a friend of your business? Now, first off, I am not going to talk to you about which platform, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, where you need to be in your business. That's something that varies. I was in a session this past week with one of our roundtables that I mentor of business people, happen to be nonprofits, but they are businesses. And we kind of had a simple walkthrough to get started, and where people have to segment their social media investment, which I think is an important thing. But what I want to talk about, or what I feel are the three pillars of social media or advertising in general, which most of the conversation these days revolves around social media. The first thing I think you need to look at in your business is your ratings. And what I'm talking about is things like Yelp, particularly if you're a retail or consumer business, because I've seen it with my own eyes. I've done it. I've made decisions on whether to do business with a company, with a business, a restaurant, a Main Street business, based on what I saw on Yelp, because you try to get a sense of what kind of business they are. Are they a good place just to do business? Yes, I want to know if their product or service is good, but I want to do business with businesses that are good, honest businesses. And these types of ratings can be very, very important to you, again, particularly if you're in a retail or consumer business. So pay attention to the ratings. I've bumped into some businesses that take them real serious. They look at them once a week, once a month, and if they've gotten a bad rating, they dig into it. They try to get it changed. I mean, they put some effort into it. You don't have to be technically inclined to do that, but it is very important. In the past, 9 times out of 10, people don't complain to you when they've got a complaint, right? That's an old statistic. I mean, way old, okay? People don't tell you. Well, today they've got a way to tell you. And I think that's better than him not telling me and then turning around and telling other people, and I have no idea what's going on. But yet my business revenue, my business will suffer. So pay attention to the ratings if they truly impact your business. The second thing is advertising. Social media provides a medium of advertisement. And my first question to you, as we discussed this past week in our business roundtable, do you know which of these platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, I mean, the list goes on and on and on, which of them work for you? And I include email in there as well when I'm talking about social media. Which work best for your business, your type of business? Have you determined that? I suggest that many have not. And that does take a little bit of an effort. But it is so important because think about it. You've got X dollars, X amount of time to invest in marketing your business. And if a piece of that, which I think it should be for every business, is social media, then why waste money? Why waste time putting your message out there in front of people that have no interest in what you're selling? It happens every day. And it's so easy on social media, I think, because it's in many cases free. Yes, they have paid advertising, but when something's free, somehow a lot of us just don't pay much attention to what we're doing. It's kind of like that old adage, throw the mud against the wall, see what sticks. I encourage you to do a little bit more than just throw that mud against the wall. It will pay off in big ways if you find those sweet spots that work for your business. I think it's important that you have a social media advertising plan. And that's the third point, is plan and strategy. If you don't have a marketing plan, I happen to believe that a simple marketing plan will assist you in so many ways. If nothing else, it will help you efficiently use your resources, such as money, time, and effort, in a much more effective way, which means bringing business to you, bringing the right business to you, because you take time to think about it and you put the plan together. And you can do your own plan, your own marketing plan. You could go online. There's so many resources, so many websites that walk you through a basic marketing plan. And many of them, again, are free. So be careful with that word. But I would say that you want to at least calendar out at least 1, 2, 3 months minimum. Same thing on your social media. By calendaring and put it what you're going to talk about on social media or what your theme is, so that you just don't get locked into one idea and just keep repeating it. If nothing else, it helps you avoid that trap. So I encourage you, have a social media plan. It's a page, a piece of paper, where you put each month or each quarter, depending on how you want to do it. And this is the key thing. Oh, we've got a big sale coming up, spring sale. Well, that's what you're going to talk about. And you may put it several different ways, but you're going to put it on the social media platforms that work for you. And you're probably going to do some other advertising, more traditional advertising, such as print or snail mail. Again, don't forget about email campaigns. I still think there's a big place in marketing and advertising for email and using it really effective. It does take some time, and it will behoove you if you can find somebody to help you with it. But again, go online. There are all kinds of services that can automate the sending of the mail and so on and so forth. Most of them do charge, but it's not a big expense. And it's not that hard to learn if you're bound and determined to do it yourself. And don't forget, when you do a social media thing, when you do an email, you can test ideas. You can even test the way you present something, whether it's the graphics or the text. You can test it because, again, there's so much free out there as far as sending it out. So you send 100 of this out and you see what you get back. You send 100 to your existing client base of one idea, one sale price, so many % off. And you see how many people respond to it. And you say, well, that's not just tweak it, adjust it. Try a group B, as we call it, A, B, C. See what message is the most effective. And that way, again, you can spend your time and dollars in a way that are most effective for your business. Well, at this point, ratings, advertising, plan, and strategy, that to me are the minimum, or as I like to say it more positively, the three keys to having social media be a friend of your business, be a tool that will help you be more successful in your business, particularly in generating new revenue. It's so important. So think about that. See if you can make social media a friend of your business. At this point, the rest is up to you. I hope you'll take the ideas that we've talked about and see how they may work within your business and your budget. All of this information, you have to take it into consideration with what works in your business. And I always try to mention, a mentor, an advisor, coach can help you realize the goals, including the effectiveness of your social media, by helping you learn how to use your assets more effectively. Reach out for some help, at the very least some guidance that a mentor, advisor, or coach can offer you. And I would like you to please put a note on your calendar to join us again next Monday, right here on irlonestar.com at 11 a.m. And I encourage you to look for the video podcast of today's show on the Weekly Business Hour page at onebestconsult.com or on Facebook. Just look up the Weekly Business Hour page and you'll find today's program and can listen to parts that you may want to re-listen to. And I encourage you, please, share it with other business people you know. Get them to be followers and fans of the Weekly Business Hour. And finally, thank you for joining us. And remember to stay in touch with what's happening in Montgomery County right here on Lone Star Community Radio. And until next week, stay engaged and keep your focus on what counts in your business. Thanks.